And that's right. Welcome back to another episode of the Real Lil Show. It's going down, just so you know. Say it ain't so. All right. Y'all know the usual. I give my take and then I bait. And oh boy, do I have a take, or boy, do I have takes today because the stakes are high. Okay. And no, I'm not high. Okay. I'm actually sober and ready to rock and roll. And when I tell you we have a loaded show, I mean that sincerely, people. Okay, the Can You Dig Sports Radio Network. Where's my manners? Welcome. People on YouTube, Spotify. Welcome. Oh man, it's going down. We are loaded for beer today, as we have some amazing topics that we have, and also we also have a topic that we're going to air on the back end of the show. Me and my guy Lee, who's back here today, we recorded before. That's going to air at the bottom half of the show. So, man, yeah, a lot to talk about. Dan Hurley and UConn advancing to the Final Four. We're going to talk about him and his theatrics after the game, and maybe should it have been penalized. We're going to break that down. And Jaden Ivey, okay, a lot of stuff, a lot of controversy there. We are going to give some takes in my regards, maybe some unpopular opinions. It sure ain't popular what I'm about to say, so tune in for that. And also Jeremiah Love. What the world need now is love, right? But only it seemed like a love is only going one way. But Jeremiah Love, should he be drafted in the top 5, or are we still drafting running backs in the top 5 picks? We're going to break it down with my guy Lee Jones, who's back in the building, on the virtual building. Lee, how you feeling?
I'm good, man. Feeling good. Got some great topics today. I know we're going to have a little bit of controversy today, so I'm excited to get into it. And these are topics that people should be talking about, right? Whatever side of the equation you're on, the dialogue is what's key. So I look forward to getting real with the real Leo.
Definitely, and there's a reason why I constructed the topics the way I did. To me, Ivy is the headlining topic, but the reason why I put it number 2 is because I have the show structured in a warm up and then cool down type of sequence, because I know that second topic is going to be very hot. So I want us to cool down after that and warm us up, and not, let us get right into the gate with that. So, yeah, I'm ready to break it down. We're going to begin in college basketball. This is the tournament. So in theory, maybe that should be the headliner, and it is. Did Dan Hurley deserve a technical after the game? Obviously, UConn advancing to the Final Four, with his shot going face to face with the referee. Now I'm going to play the clip. Should have had it ready, but we're going to pull up this clip, and I'm going to show you guys how it all went down. And then Lee, after, you can give your take, and then we'll go from there. So let's get the clip of Dan Hurley. First of all, I want to play the shot. Let's play the shot. That was a magnificent shot to win the game. Let's run that first. And yeah, Lee, I mean, you look at this play, one of the massive plays that I can remember in March Madness. And you look, March Madness, you get a lot of those Cinderella, defining moments, but that right there is definitely one of them, and arguably could be top 5 of all time. Now, let's run the clip of Dan Hurley, and we'll take it from there. As you can see, I mean, what are you doing, bro? But anyway, Lee, the mic is yours. Should he had got a technical and after the game?
Yeah, so a lot of people. First of all, great comeback by UConn. I mean, just really walked Duke down in that game Sunday. Epic collapse by John Shire and the Duke Blue Devils. And for another show, we need to question, with all the talent that Duke has had, why they keep coming up short. But that's a question for another day. During the game, Hurley and the referee were, they were going head to head. They were knocking. Hurley probably should have gotten 2 technicals in that game and been thrown out anyway, by the way he was on the refs the whole time, right? And his histrionics on the sideline was, he was just really, really demonstrative. And so they give Hurley a lot of leeway during the games. And so yeah, it was a great shot, critical moment. And after the game, I guess from all of that, when Hurley saw the referee, he just went head to head with him. Now, I don't really think it was a headbutt, Leo. I mean, people calling it a headbutt. When you look at it, I'm not saying it's a headbutt. I'm saying they're toe to toe, eye to eye. Their heads are rubbing, but I wouldn't say it was a headbutt. And certainly, there's no referee in the world, right? In the world that would have called a technical on him after the game was over. Because the game had ended, and so he couldn't really call it technical because the game was over. And even if it was a 0.3 seconds on the clock, no referee in the world is going to do that. So Hurley gets away with a lot of histrionics. He's an emotional guy, but I don't see much of a foul, really, to be honest with you. I just think emotional. If they wanted to do something to Hurley, they should have teed his ass up during the game when he was doing a lot of this stuff. And because the aftermath of the game, it was such a dramatic moment, I don't think any referee, any place would have teed him up or done anything after the game was over.
I mean, look, Dan Hurley almost cost his team a trip to the Final Four. Now, I watched the clip a couple times. I still don't understand for the life of me what this cat was trying to do there. Now, we all know he's an intense guy. It's what got him this far in his career. It's the intensity of his coaching that was one of the main reasons why UConn was able to come back the way they did and had the theatrics late in the game to win the game. Obviously, Braylon Mullins drilled the 35-footer to win the game with 0.4 seconds left to go. Mind you, this team was terrible from deep. They were 1 for 18 from the three-point line and was down 19 points in this game at one point in this game, and they was able to make it back into the game. And a lot of it had to do with the adjustments, the energy that was brought by the head coach, and I get it. Now, look, I know what it would have been a horrible way to end the game. And look, I know I've been vocal, in the past of, I'm not a fan of the game, important games like this being ended on the whistle. Don't get me wrong, unless it's like a blatant, obvious infraction, right? I wasn't a fan of the Super Bowl a couple years back, the Chiefs and the Eagles, when that game ended on a DPI. That made me very angry on this show. I'm not a big fan of that. However, I'm also a fair dude, right? I'm very consistent, but I'm also fair. And 10 times out of 10, okay, if that was a player who did that, it would have been a technical foul 10 times out of 10. The heat of the moment, the gravity of the moment wouldn't have even mattered. And like I said, I'm a big accountability person. I don't believe this country gives enough accountability, especially the people in positions of authority. They seem to get exempted. Look at the Epstein list, okay, and everything going on in those files. What happened to these guys? These guys out here sipping on a coconut, okay? So because I believe that, and I know that sometimes these referees can make terrible calls and leave and beat traffic, I'm going to hold them to the highest degree. And I believe that if this was a player, he would have got it technical, and that would have cost his team a trip to the Final Four. And Dan Hurley probably should have.
Yeah, I think after, again, that meeting with the referee occurred after the game was over, so no time on the clock, so he couldn't have given him a technical. The game was over.
I mean, he probably could have. I mean, that still could happen. I've never seen it done before.
Yeah, game was over. Now, the bigger question I think, Leo, that we have to address is, and you're right, if a player did that after the game, would the NCAA suspend that player for the next game, right? Here and I think a conversation could be had by that, because you're right. No one allows a player to come head to head with a referee after the game. There will be some type of consequences there. Should Dan Hurley receive some type of, at least a fine? I mean, at least a fine. They haven't done anything because that is an offense that if a player did, probably could have been suspended for the next game. Should Hurley be fined? It would be the question I would ask you. I don't think they would in any way suspend him because there's too much money involved with the networks and things. But should they at least fine him for that action? That would be a question that I would ask you, Leo. What type of punishment? Because I don't think any way, shape, or form he would have got a technical. That was not going to affect the outcome of that game in any way. That would have people will have lost their minds if they'd have done that. But at least a fine for that, I think, is something that is suitable.
Well, let me be clear here, because by the book of the law, and I've looked this up as you were talking, a player, and I'm guessing a coach as well, can absolutely be penalized after the game ends. That's a thing that could happen. That's actually by the book of the law. It can happen. We don't see it often, so we think it can't happen, but it can. So I just want to make that clear for the listeners, right? Because I don't want them to make it look like I'm stupid here, because I'm not. By the book of the law, you can't suspend the player, and I'm guessing the coach as well.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
There can be some consequences to that player or that coach after the game. There's no doubt about that. I just
Yeah.
don't think they're going to affect the outcome of the game. But that's just certainly, you don't see coaches. You haven't. Well, yeah, Bobby Knight did a lot of stuff, but that should have been some consequences to the coach for going head to head with the referee, because he
And
walked
these
into the
players,
referee.
these players are not protected. What I mean by protected, the referees are quick to give players, technicals and whatnot. The only protection they have is kind of like when they spaz out in their own locker room, right? Or like, for example, in their own sideline, like Tyreek Hill pushing his one of his assistant coaches, or Travis Kelce abusing Andy Reid in the Super Bowl, shoving him, but no suspension because you're protected in that way. But if that happens on the field or in the court, you will get penalized for it. Now, nevertheless, besides the stupid move that Dan Hurley made, that I still don't understand what he was trying to get across there, doing that to the referee, credit to him. He passed the Lakers up on the $70 million job offer before they went on to hire JJ Redick, and now he has a team currently in the Final Four, and I'm looking forward to the Final Four, especially when you talk about UConn playing one of the tallest basketball teams on the floor in Illinois. And I think for me, Illinois have to utilize their advantage and neutralize the three-point shot, as we saw. Even though UConn had a rough start to the game from deep, they were able to bury Duke from long distance, especially there with that buzzer beater. So I'm looking forward to the Final Four. Lee, before we move on, what are your thoughts about that game in particular? And sure, shoot it. Final Four, who do you think is making the national championship?
Yeah. For me, the key in the game is the big man for UConn, Reed. Can he stay out of foul trouble with all of the big bodies that Illinois is going to have rotating through the game? Illinois is long and big, and so what can UConn do with the size of Illinois? UConn has heart. They shoot the ball well. They missed a lot of threes on Sunday, but they definitely shoot the three well. And they have the heart of a champion. Illinois is big, and Illinois passes the ball well, and they take their time on their offensive end. And so it's going to be a game where the Reed kid inside is legit. I love his foot movement. His footwork is excellent, but he's going to have to score the basketball down low, and he's going to have to stay out of foul trouble if they're going to do anything. I like Illinois in the game, to be honest with you, Lil. I think Illinois is their time. I think they're just going to rotate so many big bodies, and they're going to get on, and then they're an excellent offensive rebounding team. That's going to hurt UConn in my estimation. So I like Illinois to win that game. The game of the night is Arizona and Michigan, and look, I hate to say it, this is the national championship game, blah blah blah. That's an old cliche, but I do think the winner of that game is going to be the ultimate champion. And man, a lot of physicality in that game. Arizona has all those young boys, big bodies. They're an inside-out team, very talented. But Michigan is loaded. Michigan, a team that doesn't have many flaws, and they have excellent inside. They're big as well on the inside and have a perimeter game. I like Michigan to beat Arizona, and I like Michigan to win it all, to cut down the nets as the national champion, Leo.
And look, I'm not mad that UConn beat Duke, because I was a St. John's guy. That's my team. Okay, salute to Rick Pitino. And I felt like we blew that game. We actually shot the ball well, which is not something we've done. but we did in the first half of that game. And then it just went way wide after that. And my guy Dylan Darling, he wanted to be the hero again. The week before he made a layup at the buzzer, and he wanted to ride that momentum. Took a horrible shot,
Yeah,
and
that was
Duke
a
was able to. It was a horrible shot, real
yeah.
horrible shot, and especially when you could collapse, collapse the defense and then dish it out for a better look than that. Duke was able to win, and they blew a 19-point lead, and there's no excuses there. Unfortunately, we are talking about headbutts here because, to be honest with you, I mean, as a coach, you got to be better than that.
Yeah, I
You got to
agree.
be better than that. You cannot preach discipline, to your team and do something like that. To me, it's hypocritical. But it's done. It's done. There's a big Final Four coming up this Saturday, a doubleheader, and we'll see if they're about that business.
Yeah, yeah.
And we are going to move on here. Ooh, it's about to get spicy in here. Uh, let me take a sip of this water because the NBA, man, the NBA, Jaden Ivey, I mean, the Chicago Bulls is going down, sure is. And Jaden Ivey was released by the Chicago Bulls after Pride Month comments. Now, Lee, I'm gonna let you begin. Is this a bad look for the NBA?
Yeah, yeah, we live in a country,
Wait,
or
Lee, my fault. Let me play the clip.
okay,
Let
play
me
the clip.
play the
Play the
clip,
clip.
and then I'll let you get it. I'll let you see it, and then you can proceed from there. Let me
All
play the
right.
clip for everybody to listen to what went down.
They said my conduct is detrimental to the team, right? Why didn't they just say we don't agree with his stance on LGBTQ? Why didn't they say that? Well, how is it conduct detrimental to the team? What did I do to the team? What did I do to the players? I did nothing but practice with them, play with them, pass the ball to them, good teammate to them. Said good job, good shot. I said, good job, good pass. Way to play, bro. Right? I said these things to my teammates. Was never detrimental to them. So why is it that the NBA and the Chicago Bulls say that I'm detrimental to the team? How? Because I believe in the truth. Because I know Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life.
All right, that wasn't the clip I wanted, but that's the clip we got. So Lee, you can proceed.
Yeah, I mean that's tough, man. We live in a country where uh, uh, everyone's supposed to have freedom of speech, Leo, and that's in our Constitution. And for Jaden, I'm gonna be straight up and keep it a buck. Uh, he said nothing wrong. That's his opinion. That's how he feels, and he should be able to express that opinion. Right. To his point, he didn't hurt anybody. He's been a good teammate. He has. He played hard. He's averaged 11.5 points for the Bulls, and he was averaging almost 15 points for Detroit. So he's having a good year. He's a team guy, very well-spoken young man. And so in a country where you're supposed to have freedom of speech, what he said and how he expressed himself, in theory, he should be able to do that and play in the NBA. That's in theory, Leo. NBA is a private organization, right? And when they talk about conduct detrimental to the team, I'm going to say this. I wouldn't say that's detrimental to the team, but the team will say, because we have fans who are lesbian, gay, queer, whatever you want to call them, that's offensive to, then you're bringing a negative light on the team. That's what the Bulls will say. And they would phrase that as conduct detrimental to the team. Now, I would say the man has a right to say what he has to say. Freedom of speech. But the Bulls, they're certainly saying, look, you play for the Chicago Bulls. We're a privately held company. The NBA is a privately held organization. We have the right to have to police our players how we want to and phrase conduct detrimental to the team, how we want to phrase it. Jaden Ivey, you don't have to. You can go play for another league if you feel that way. You have the right to do that, and you certainly can do that. That's what the Bulls would say. And so, yeah, he has the right to say what he wants to say. But in a nutshell, they also have a right to say, this is hurting our product. It is hurting the NBA Shield, and we're not going to stand for it. That's a catch-22. The NBA should, in my opinion, support his views. They should say, we don't agree with Jaden Ivey's point of view, what he said, how he said it. We support the LGBTQ community. That's why we have Pride Week. We don't agree with it. But in the country, what makes our country so great, he has the freedom to say that. That would have been my stance as the president of basketball operations for the Chicago Bulls. But certainly the Bulls, privately held organization, has the right to say, no, you're hurting our bottom line. You're hurting the Shield. We're not going to tolerate it.
Look, the Bulls is on some bullshit. That's how I'm going to leave it. And the NBA, this is a definite bad look.
You didn't like my politically correct answer, Leah?
I mean, I hear you. I get it. But at the same time, the Bulls is on some bullshit. And Adam Silver is overstepping his boundaries a little bit to me. You know, he's been doing that. It's not like, you know, specifically for this topic, but in general, he has been. It's a terrible look. It's a terrible look on the sport. Now, look, I like the game of basketball. I don't love it. It's no secret if you've been watching this show, mainly because of the style of play, lack of rivalries, tanking issues. Find the game primarily in the regular season to be a snooze fest, to be a little bit boring. Just cutting it straight to the chase, right? But aside from that, with Adam Silver's commitment to banning free speech that isn't popular, he's making the game easier for people to boycott. And look, let me get back on track for a second and say this. Jaden Ivey has the right to have his beliefs and say what he want to say on his platform. It is a bad look for the NBA for working with the Bulls to release him. Now, if people wanted to say that Ivey flamed out, you know, obviously being a former 5th overall pick, you know, by the Pistons, and then having the injuries, or being the 5th overall pick, and then having the injuries that set him back physically for a guy who relied on athleticism. That's fair. Okay, all right, fine. You want to say that he flamed out and all those things, those injuries diminish somewhat of his athleticism. Cool. That made him easier to be disposed of, especially after these comments. Cool. But at the same time, it's not cool. With that being said, it is a war on free speech, which started to happen, especially primarily during the pandemic. Okay? During the pandemic. And people were having their accounts demonetized, removed for having views that were quote unquote unpopular opinions. Let's not forget what the NBA tried to do to Kyrie Irving. This guy was one step away from being blackballed from the league because of his stance on vaccines and because he posted a book on his IG, and the NBA came in there, overstepped their boundaries, and suspended him. Because guess what? You can't say nothing bad against a particular group of people. I'm not going to say their name because you know exactly who I'm talking about. You can't say nothing about them because if you do, all that is going to be taken away from you. Ask Kanye West.
Question for you, and I don't want to interrupt, but I want you to get this into your monologue and what you're saying. Do you feel that a privately held company, organization, private company has the right to set a standard for how they want their employees to act? Doesn't mean it doesn't have freedom of speech, but do you think a private company, which the NBA is, a private business, private organization, has the right to say that by you saying this, you're hurting our bottom line? Hold on, let me finish. You're hurting our bottom line. Our bottom line, you're alienating some of our fans, and we're against that. Do you think the Bulls have a right, or the NBA has a right, as a private organization, private company, to do that?
No, because it's insinuating that you don't have a right to be Christian because he's coming from it from a religious belief. Because in that clip, in that live, he's quoting God, he's quoting his faith.
Yep.
So his faith, if anybody, clearly we know that whoever's running the Bulls clearly don't believe in faith. Clearly they don't. Now, I mean, if they do, they betraying their faith. Because I do believe that there are fake Christians out here. Don't get me wrong. So it's either one of the two. So to me, no, because that would be like, okay, you're not accepting his faith and what he believes. Because again, it's not about what people deem to be right or wrong. His religion is what his religion is. And the one thing about America that was good about America before was that people came to this country, got the jobs they wanted to get for the most part, built a life, built a home, and the core values was family and religion. That was always the core values of America. It wasn't any of this other stuff. It was family and religion. And what's going on is beyond basketball and what basketball could comprehend, or in some words, even fight in some regards, right? It's bigger than basketball. What's going on and what's the move that's trying to be made? Okay, the separation of religion from schools. Before I was in school, obviously went on to graduate and have my bachelor's and all that, but in the younger years, you say the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and there's God in there. So if there's God in there, right, in these public schools before, now it's not, ironically, but before, if God was quoted when you said your allegiance, then obviously the faith of Christianity is tied to that. If you read your Bible, you know what God said that you can and can't do. And that's just from a religious perspective. But if I could leave the religious perspective for a second, and I'm going to just wrap up this point that I want to make about how when you say something against a particular people, like how Kyrie Irving did and got his almost got blackballed and what other people did and lost a lot of endorsement deals, why can't Christianity have that same protection? That's what I want to know. Because anytime you say something that walks that thin line of what people will call a certain word, and you obviously I'm tiptoeing like Angelina the ballerina on my own damn show, but that's just where we are.
Yeah,
they come after you, right? And it could be something that the intention was not even to say something that will be deemed that way, but they say, "Oh, you're this," right? So where's the protection when it comes to Christianity?
No,
right?
Leo, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Look, I do think personally, this is Lee Jones's opinion. I think that certainly he shouldn't have been released or made an example of. I 100% respect his right to voice his opinion, because again, if you don't like his opinion, you don't have to chime in and say go Jaden. You can boo him if you don't like him at the game, but to take his livelihood, that's a bit extreme. But the question is, aside from my views as well, the question we have to answer is, does a privately held company, Leo, have the right to say you cannot bring detrimental conduct to our product? That's the question that we have to answer, not whether we think he was right or wrong.
Who gets to control the narrative? Because when Doc Rivers and Steve Kerr and Greg Popovich get on their daggone platforms, act like they, political geniuses, and they speak their politics, they don't care about who it offends.
I agree.
They don't care about who it offends. But yet, because it fits the narrative and the mainstream narrative, it's okay.
Well, and also to your earlier point, and I do agree with what you're saying, if Ivey was playing better and he was doing, he only played 4 games with the Bulls, right? So they made an example out of him because the Bulls aren't going anywhere anyway. So they made a quick example out of him for the rest of the league. That's what this was more about than anything. But the question is, and that's certainly what the NBA is doing and showing their muscle and their might. If we put it on, you have to fall in line lockstep on it and not comment on it. Well, I just think that's wrong. I don't think the man should lose his livelihood because he's a Christian. Matter of fact, I know he shouldn't. And I commend him for it. I commend him for expressing his religious views. Now, you always have to understand how, when, and where you pick your battles, but I commend the man for expressing his views, because he's right in what he said. He did not do anything egregious. He just spoke his mind. Now he also could have said, in speaking with him, he could have said he doesn't support it, on which he did, but it's a way to say that. He could have said it in a different way, promoting his Christian values. But a half glass half full, glass half empty. I still say he shouldn't have been cut loose, because he's going to have a hard time, because he's not had the success that he needed to have. He's going to have a hard time getting on another team, Leo. That's going to happen.
I mean, Kyrie Irving almost had a hard time. Literally, it was the Mavericks or bust. Like, people don't realize how close Kyrie Irving was out of the door. It took the Mavericks trying to make Luka happy that they gambled and gave Kyrie Irving the opportunity they got, and he made the most of it, obviously, when he got there.
Yeah, Kyrie was going to get picked up, but he wasn't going to get paid. And that was the key with Kyrie. They wanted to blackball Kyrie in his pocket. He was too talented not to be picked up by somebody, but they wanted to take that money out of Kyrie's pocket, right? Dallas gave him a contract. Brooklyn, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago on your show, Lil. The Brooklyn Nets have never rebounded from trading Kyrie Irving, because that trade led to trading Kevin Durant. And look where the Nets are now. They refused to do it. And a lot of it had to do with their viewpoint, whereas Kyrie was too good of a player to let go. He was too talented. Somebody was going to pick him up, but the owner and Marks thought we were going to put him in his place and not give him this contract extension. Well, look how it panned out. So, in some ways, all things work for the glory, as they say, Leo. And Kyrie is excelling, and I think Jaden Ivey is going to excel as well. I just hate how they've sort of labeled him or putting black out on him.
I think a lot of people
wasn't fair.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who believe in Christianity, and you see guys like Travion Henderson, running back from the Patriots, coming out and obviously expressing his beliefs as well. The more people that do it, you can't fire everybody. You can't let everybody go. So I just want to put that PSA out there. But look, the NBA, and I'm going to wrap it up with a couple more points, and then Lee, I'll let you respond. The NBA needs to be neutral for the sake of keeping their audiences. Okay, the product is not that good to be turning off fans due to politics. The NBA is not that sport. I'm sorry, it's not. The NFL maybe can get away with it. Whatever they decide to do with the bad money.
Do you turn off the LGBTQ fan base as well? See, that's the other
that's
thing.
Why I said that's exactly why I said they have to be neutral.
Yeah.
Right? They have to be neutral for the sake of keeping their audience. Now, I don't know how much of that fan base is watching the NBA. I'm pretty sure there probably are people that's watching, and that's cool. But it's not about, look, people that have their lifestyles are entitled to it. They're entitled to their preference, and I want to preference that. Okay, whatever you do, it doesn't matter. This is America. You can do a whole lot. Okay, and that's fine. No problems there. I treat everybody with respect. I have family members that are in that type of lifestyle. That's not my type of lifestyle. But you know what? They're my family. I treat them with respect, and that's just how I leave it, right? Just like I treat anybody from every race, creed, ideas, whatever. If you believe in robots and aliens, I still would treat you with respect. Everybody's entitled. However, what I have an issue with is the government and corporations being in cahoots with the media, imposing their beliefs on society and forcing it into the schools and thus onto the children. That's what I have a problem with. And that's exactly what Jaden Ivey was getting at on that live when he talked about the NBA promoting it, right? Because it's one thing to have preferences and whatnot. And yeah, sure, you should be able to do what you want to do. Whoever you want to get married to, whoever you want to be with, you should be able to have that freedom. At the end of the day, you're going to be judged by whoever higher power you look up to. If you do believe in that, or if you're atheist, it is what it is, right? We're only going to be on this earth for a time. But what I have a problem with is the constant promotion of it when you talk about schools and everywhere and trying to force it. You're not gonna do that around me. I'm sorry. That's not going to be a thing that you're going to do. And that's just the reality. So Jaden Ivey came out. He said his piece. He got fired for it. He got 1,000 lashes for it. But guess what? Just like in the Kyrie Irving situation, everything works out. When Colin Kaepernick, had a situation with the NFL, he got a lot of endorsement deals. He had a Nike commercial that was very popular at the time. It worked out. He's well off. Ain't nobody feeling sorry for Colin Kaepernick. He's doing very good, right? So it'll work out for Jaden Ivey. I'm confident it will.
Yeah, and unfortunately, everybody don't have the fairy tale story that Kaepernick ended up with. Kyrie was ultra talented, so he was going to get other opportunities.
Maybe his calling is not basketball. Some people calling is something else.
Well, and I was
calling is helping leading people to Christianity.
That's what my point was going to be, Leo. Maybe this is for him to say, okay, these are my views. I'm going to stick with my views, and if that's the way they feel, I don't need to play professional basketball, and that's certainly well within his right, and he can do that, right? Or he can go to a country where the views are a little different and play basketball. That's why I referenced the conversation about the NBA being a privately held company and they choose to do this. Doesn't mean I support it, you support it, whatever case. This is what they do as an organization. Now, if you are going to be in that organization, unfortunately, you have to fall in line with that. And Mr. Ivey has to understand that from a certain perspective. Doesn't mean that you lower your standards or your beliefs, because your beliefs are your beliefs. And if you're steadfast and you're a Christian and know your beliefs, roll with it, brother. Roll with it. It's okay.
It's like
maybe basketball, this is not yours. But if you are going to play in that league, they're going to do that. You already see what stance they're going to take. And that stance was not only for Jaden Ivey, Leo, that was for other players within the league as well.
And look, Kwame Brown, right? Remember Kwame Brown? Stephen A., called him out and whatnot. And people was calling him out for being a bust and everything. That video went viral. And guess what? He built up his YouTube platform. Now he's doing interviews. Now he got his own channel. Now he's going on shows. Stephen A. literally brought him back to relevancy. So again, it really depends on the person and how they use this.
Yep.
Trust me. Every blessing, every lesson was a blessing because I made it that. So there's no, keeping Lil in a box, because Lil's going to find his way out the box and he's going to make what happened, the lesson, become a blessing. And that's what Jaden Ivey got to do. And I believe that he's more than capable of doing so.
Absolutely.
We'll leave it at that.
Well,
yeah, we're going to move on to the next topic.
Good topic. Very good topic.
Yeah, definitely. We cooking up. You know how that go. And we are going to talk about Jeremiah Love with all the hype around him, because Lee, obviously, they are GMs and owners and coaches doing press conferences right now as we gear up closer to the NFL draft, which I'm looking forward to. And there was a couple headline quotes that came out. So I'm going to read that to you right now. Titans GM, we're taking the best football player. Okay, that's the Titans GM right there. We're taking the best football player. John Harbaugh calls Jeremiah Love very, very, very good. Now, with all the hype around Jeremiah Love potentially getting drafted as a top 5 pick in the draft, is drafting a running back that high a good idea?
Well, when you look at talent, Jeremiah Love, 6 feet, 214 pounds, runs a 4.36 40-yard dash. His 10-yard split is 1.55, meaning he has some explosion right off the line of scrimmage. Rush for 6.9 yards a carry, Leo, almost 7 yards a carry now, back-to-back years, right? 21 touchdowns this year, 19 last year. So we're talking about an explosive football player now. We're not talking about the average running back that we see. Now, when you look at the last 10 years, I think there's been 6 running backs selected in the top 10, and I'm gonna call the names out real quick. Ashton Genty last year, had a so-so year, 975 yards, 5 touchdowns,
underwhelming to me.
3.7 yards a carry. The jury's still out on him because the Raiders line was terrible. Came on the second half of the year though, Leo. But then let's go back to 2023. Bijan Robinson, number 8 pick. That was a great pick. We would say that was a great pick. Running back, paying dividends for Atlanta. We go back to 2018, Saquon Barkley, the 2nd pick in the draft. We would say that was a great pick. He's still doing his thing, led the Eagles to a Super Bowl. Okay, let's go back to 2017, Leonard Fournette. Fournette had a lot of hype coming out of LSU. Early on, he was good, sort of faded a little late. The jury's out. We won't say that's so good.
He had a very good playoff run with the Buccaneers.
Had a good playoff run with the Buccaneers. Yeah. Absolutely. So the jury's sort of mixed bag on there. Ezekiel Elliott, drafted number 4, 2016, had a great career. The injury hurt Ezekiel, but from the time he got to Dallas, he was a stud, drafted number 2 overall. Christian McCaffrey in 2017, drafted number 8 pick in the 17 draft by Carolina. Did his thing at Carolina, still doing his thing at San Francisco. I say all this and I bring all these people up to say, if the talent is there, Leo, you take a running back that high. Now, the Giants, and I'm a Cowboys fan, so the Giants sitting there at number 5. Pair him with Scatterboo, you got a pretty potent running game, Leo. You got a running game. Kansas City, the Chiefs at number 10. I think they're 10. They need an explosive running back, but they got Kenneth Walker. But Walker has always been paired with somebody else, right? He's been paired with somebody else. That's
not allowed. PSA. So do not allow the Chiefs to get Jeremiah Love. Please don't. PSA.
It would be great to pair him with Kenneth Walker. So in saying all of that, I go back to, if the talent is there, if a running back's talent, say, get him 4.36 at 214, 215 pounds, good receiver out of the backfield, very explosive. Yeah. I'll draft him with a top 5 pick.
Tough. I mean, look, man, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't, in theory, because obviously now we get into that debate of roster building and positional value, and that narrative was a thing because running backs lack the longevity, that wear and tear. The moment they got a contract, for example, Todd Gurley, Ezekiel Elliott, who you mentioned, they fell off the cliff of the earth. And that's why at one point they weren't getting contracts, but they did have a little renaissance the last, I would say, 2 seasons with Saquon Barkley almost getting the Russian title and whatnot, and having 2,000 yards that year. Very good season from him. And yeah, teams have gotten back to running the football a little bit more because the league was turning into a passing league. Now they're getting back to running the football now. But I still think that is too high. I think, especially when you look at the context of the teams that need him, most of these teams need an offensive line. To me, there's more value in an offensive lineman compared to a running back. Like, yeah, Kenneth Walker, obviously, you mentioned him. Phenomenal playoffs. Phenomenal Super Bowl. Was the Super Bowl MVP. But he didn't have a great full season. Right? The beginning of the regular season, they couldn't win the football. It just so happened that they clicked at the right time, Seattle, and started to get that running game going right before the playoffs came about, and then they was able to ride that momentum into the Super Bowl victory. But they couldn't run the football like that early in the year, and Kenneth Walker's another guy that happens to get injured a lot. You just said it. So to me, when you look at the positional value, you're going to find more value with an offensive lineman. And I'm talking about teams that need to get their line right. For example, the Titans, right? You look at the Titans. I understand their offense lack explosiveness and whatnot. But okay, you add Jeremiah Love. All right. Yeah. Jeremiah Love, Cam Ward. I like it on paper. I like it. But paper don't play. What else do you got there? Wan'Dale Robinson. I always like him. Like, I think I'm the only one that like Wan'Dale Robinson. I think he's actually good. But what else do you have? You need a line. So again, if there's one team that I would give an exception to, it would be the team that did it before and it didn't work out, the Giants. All right. And I would give them the exception to do so because I do believe that they have a team that's equipped to take the best player. when you have to rebuild your team, when you got a lot of holes, the Titans, they have a lot of holes. They could draft on defense. They could get a pass rusher. They don't have that elite pass rusher. Okay. Then, yeah, you don't have the luxury of taking the best player. What are you taking the best player for? The Raiders thought they did last year with Ashton Genty, and what happened? It wasn't a good year compared to the years he had at Boise State. So to me, the only team that I feel that either need him and could use him and have the ability to take him at that high level and do so is the Giants. And they already had that mistake before when they did it the opposite way, when they took the best player in Saquon Barkley and he didn't have no line. So he really didn't have the year that he could have had, because we saw what happened when he did get the best line of football in Philly. He went on to win a championship and actually rode them to a championship. So that's my point. It comes down to positional value and need. And if you have a bunch of needs, to me, drafting a running back that high is premature.
Yeah. 3 quick points, Leo. There's more than one way to construct and build your team, right? You can build your team multiple ways. That's why they have free agency, right? That's why they have it, right? So you can, if you're a team that you're looking at and you think this guy is a great back in the elk of Saquon Barkley and Bijan Robinson, Christian McCaffrey, you take him and you build your team through free agency, right? And you get this guy and you put him in there. But also remember this about drafting. You talked about injuries and things and that and how running backs fizzle out. The beauty of drafting a running back in the first round now, as opposed to years ago, is the money value is not as high as it used to be, right? So those first 4 years, which, you give them a little signing bonus in that first 4 years they play, the salary's minimal. That 5th year, especially if you draft them in the first round, that 5th year option, it goes up a little bit significantly. But you can really get a running back for 5 years. For 5 years and have them play for you for 5 years before you have to really commit big dollars to them. But
that's not always the case. That's not always the case, because the running backs know that they have mileage, and so they would try to get a contract the first year. They have the option to opt out.
Well, but they can't. So if you draft a running back in the first round of the NFL draft, you have his rights for 5 years. Right, you have it for 5 years.
But they can hold out, when they want a contract.
Well, if you hold out, you don't get paid, and holding out only says that
maybe on Bell. I mean,
your time starts up. Holdouts in the NFL are not prudent because, one, you get fined for every day you hold out, and 2, even if you hold out in year 3, when you come back, you still go back to year 3, so it doesn't work for them. But so you have them for 5 years, and so now if you don't pick up that 5th year option, then that person becomes a free agent, but you still can franchise him if you don't. So more to the story, what I'm trying to say is the best time to draft a star running back, if you think this guy is of the Saquon Barkley and all that ilk, is to draft him right out of college, because the financial commitment is not as such as you would pay in free agency or on that second contract. So, I just think they should take a chance on that. If you believe this guy's a stud, which a lot of people do, I think they should take him. I think Harbaugh is going to think very hard about taking him, especially with Scatterboo getting injured late too. But even when Scatterboo comes back, that's a 1-2 punch that the Giants will be pretty good.
That's why I think the Giants, that's why I would give the Giants the ability to do so. I think they had a very decent free agency. I like the moves that they made. And I think in regards to having that identity on offense, they had their quarterback already. They know what they got in Jackson Dart. They have Malik Neighbors. They know what they got in Neighbors. So, yeah, you are in a position where you can take Jeremiah Love. So they will be my exception to this conversation. But other teams, like the Titans, you have way more to do than Jeremiah Love. You're not in a position to draft Jeremiah Love. Look what the Raiders did last year. Did not work out, and maybe it could work out in the future. But it's going to be 23 years to build the Raiders. And by that time, Genty will probably be looking for another contract.
I think Genty's going to work out for him. I like what he did towards the second half of the year. I think he's coming on it. But you're right. By getting Lindenbaum, that helped their offensive line. The Raiders have to build off of that. So you're not wrong about building that offensive line. They have to get the
think about
offensive
the
line
Lions, right? When the
Yeah.
Lions took Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, they could have, because they have, well, not, I don't know anymore, because they lost, definitely not anymore, but because they had some retirements and whatnot. But at that time, they had the best offensive line in football that could support Jahmyr Gibbs and put him in a position where immediately he could succeed. But he was always a blue chip player too,
Yeah.
so that definitely does help. And Jeremiah Love has some of those blue chip, traits, like, being able to catch the ball and whatnot. And Jahmyr Gibbs was always a weapon, but they had a line. They had the team already in place to add him along with David Montgomery, who they was able to ease Jahmyr Gibbs into some workflow. So for me, it really depends on your team. But in theory, when you talk about positional value and not playing Madden and how you actually build the football team, it's from the inside out. You build your team through the offensive line. And if you have an offensive line and you have a quarterback and a wide receiver, great, take your running back. But if you don't, then you need to build that offensive line for sure.
Watch out for the Commanders. They're in the top 10. That's a team that potentially will take a peek at Jeremiah Love. And then we both said it, Kansas City. That's another team. So those three teams, the Giants, the Commanders, and the Chiefs, are teams that and well, not really, because they signed a running back. They got the boy from Jacksonville. Jacksonville may be looking for another running back as well, because ATN went to the Saints. So there are some people in the first round that, even though Jacksonville drafts later, that I think Jeremiah Love certainly will be a first-round draft pick. But I like those three teams in the top 10 as potential destinations for him.
I mean, don't get me wrong. This is my last point, really. And it's not really a point, really. Look, it's just I like Jeremiah Love, and I do think he's one of the best players in the draft class. So from a fandom perspective, I do want him to go in the top 5. I do want to see him with Jackson Dart. I do want to see him with Jaden Daniels. I wouldn't mind seeing him with Cam Ward, right? From a fan perspective. But from a guy that's putting on his team roster construction, building cap on, I do play Madden. I do a lot of franchise mode, and I treat that franchise mode like I'm a real daggone coach. All right. And I draft offensive linemen 10 times out of 10 before I draft anybody else. Then I get me a quarterback. That's just how I flow. I can always find the running back, So to me, you can always find the running back. How many good running backs that we know of came in the second round, came later in drafts? There's a lot of them. Who was this Travion Henderson dude, right? He came out, he did his thing. Very good running back, right? I knew about Amarion Hampton. I knew about him. But guess what? The offensive line on the Chargers sucked because of the injuries, and then he had his injuries. So, that's just my take on it. But Jeremiah Love is a very good player, and hopefully he goes to the right situation that would enhance his talents.
Drafts in 3 weeks, man. So we're going to get our answers pretty soon.
And I'll be looking forward to that. Ladies and gentlemen, we are pressed for time. And that wraps up another episode of The Real Lil Show with your boy, The Real Lil, and my guy, Lee Jones. And Lee, by all means, plug yourself in, my guy. How can my listeners listen to your show?
As usual, Sunday, 6:30 p.m. After the Buzzer Show with Lee Jones. Check me out, man. This is how we do it. We talk all sports, every sport. And, we keep it real, man. We don't sugarcoat things, you have to have an open mind when you come on my show, because we're going to talk the talk. We're going to talk the talk. We're going to make you think about some things, and we want the input from all of you. So 6:30 p.m. every Sunday after the Buzzer Show with Lee Jones. And
you already know the vibes. The Real Lil Show on the Can You Dig Sports Radio Network on YouTube and Spotify. Give me a high five. We out. Peace.
Sports, politics, conspiracy theories. We are here to give you our unique perspectives on things happening in the world. It's the one and only The Real Lil on The Real Lil Show.